thank you so much for your testimony today. I yield back.
Thank you. We now recognize Mr. Perry for his questions. Mr. Perry.
I thank the gentleman and I thank the witnesses. I would like to expand the conversation, if you will. I don't think that women and girls can be successful or really even happy members of society when they face forms of gender-based violence, often resulting in physical harm to their bodies. I particularly want to highlight the impact of FGM, female genital mutilation, on women and girls. It is a harmful practice that severely affects a girl's health, development, education, and her quality of life. It is commonly performed on girls from infancy to 15 years old, leaving a lifelong impact on the most innocent among us. Girls who are subjected to FGM are more likely to drop out of school. Girls affected by FGM are also at increased risk of becoming child brides. Just last week, I heard of a devastating story in Egypt. You might be aware, a 12-year-old girl bled to death after having FGM performed. Her parents and her aunt made the choice to take this young, innocent girl to a private clinic, and I said clinic, to have the practice done, and she lost her life. This case exemplifies how difficult it is for the international community to end the harmful practice, because Egypt actually banned FGM in 2008 and criminalized it in 2016, yet Egyptians are still struggling to eradicate the practice. In the past year, we have FGM convictions out of the United Kingdom and Ireland. In the UK, a mother became the first person convicted of FGM in the country after she was found guilty of performing the practice. She performed it herself on her 3-year-old daughter. And in Ireland, a married couple was found guilty of carrying out the practice on their 1-year-old daughter. The practice has also been happening right here in the United States. We saw the 2017 landmark arrest of 2 Michigan-based doctors, I underscore doctors, accused of performing FGM on at least 9 underage girls from 8 to 13 years old. A majority of the victims were brought across state lines, all traveled with their parents. The testimony of the young, innocent girls included in the criminal complaint against the doctors, it's harrowing to say the least. 2 of the young victims believed that they were traveling with their moms to Michigan for a fun girls' weekend. I mean, that's the ultimate betrayal, in my opinion. The 2017 Michigan case was the first time the United States used our 1996 federal statute banning the practice. Unfortunately, the Michigan case resulted in the federal statute being ruled unconstitutional by a federal district judge. It has now been 16 months since a federal district judge ruled in the United States federal ban on FGM unconstitutional, putting the onus on Congress to pass new legislation. And indeed, tomorrow, February 6th, is the International Day of Zero Tolerance for FGM. Now, I propose legislation to not only reinstate a ban on FGM in the United States, but also to make our laws stronger to ensure successful prosecution in the future. And there's a new, I mentioned doctors in this, and the advent is not only overseas, but in the United States, where the terminology uses it's being medicalized, a medicalized felony practice. Ms. Boss, what message do you think it sends to the international community, including governments that have yet to ban the practice, that the United States does not currently have a federal ban on FGM?
I do think it's critical that the U.S. show leadership in some of these places where we are, oftentimes as implementers trying to enforce laws. There are many places, thankfully, where there are laws banning FGM, but you're right, there's a critical gap in how we enforce them, even in the work that we do. So we really are focused, again, on working with law enforcement, the judiciary communities, to really halt this practice, because the kind of tragedy that you mentioned, unfortunately, it's all too common. So, I do hope the U.S. continues to show leadership in this space and really continues to model really the best of what we want to do to the rest of the world.
I appreciate it. I do have I find it hard to find proponents, advocates of FGM, even in this body, but yet we can't seem to move a bill. And I get it, if they don't like my bill, one should be offered that they do like. I think it just absolutely, we have to send a very strong message Ms. Crocker, Dr. Cates, do you have anything to add in this regard? I'm sure you work in the space as well.
I would just like to thank you for your focus on gender-based violence and the many different forms that it can take, including in the context of emergencies. And as I noted in my opening remarks, there is a bipartisan bill, the Safe from the Start Act, which would expand and strengthen existing U.S. government policy and efforts to support countering gender-based violence in its many forms. And we would strongly encourage passage of that bill.
I thank the Chair.
Thank you. And I now recognize Mr. Deutsch for his question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.